What's going on, YouTube? So, I wanted to do something a little different today. I wanted to take a step back from all the freaking seriousness and just make a laid-back video where I share with you my recollections and memories of my time at the Virginia Military Institute. But before I do, I want to share with you my day. So, it's a Wednesday afternoon here in the States where I'm at, and it's freaking hot outside. It's so freaking hot that I was sweating like a nun in a cucumber field. And so I just got done taking a shower. My hair's wet. I know my hair looks crazy. It's in that awkward in-between growing out phase because I'm trying to make it long and beautiful like Fabio. And right now it's looking like a weird, awkward Asian bowl cut, but moving right along. I've been meaning to make this video for a long time now, but I felt as if it wasn't appropriate to do it last year or even 2 years ago because it would have been too recent since I've departed from the mother eye. And it's been about it's been more than 5 years since I've graduated and almost a decade since I've matriculated at the Virginia Military Institute. But before I begin telling you my story of my cadetship, I think in this video here today, I'm just going to be focusing on my rat year, which is otherwise known as the freshman year in the civilian university equivalency. So I'm only going to be sharing with you my first year experience. And as I recall my experience at the Virginia Military Institute, I'm just going to be saying VMI from now on. That's what it abbreviates down to. So VMI stands for the Virginia Military Institute. It's a small public military college here in the South, and it's got a long history and a lot of tradition and some strange rituals and stuff we do as cadets when we're there. And I'm going to be referencing this notepad so that I can keep my thoughts all organized and that I don't ramble too much or go off topic, because I tend to do that, and I know that some people find that annoying, and so I feel you, I got you, don't even worry. And so let's begin. So let's go way back in time and let's start. It just feels like last month or even a year ago that I was a newly commissioned lieutenant in the Army as an infantry officer, and now here I am. It just feels like yesterday that I had tears in my eyes as I was graduating, and I was a young man ready to tackle the world. But the fact of the matter is, it wasn't last month that I was a lieutenant, or even last year. It was 2010 when I matriculated at VMI. Now, I started my cadetship a little earlier than some others because I participated in the STP program, which is the Summer Transition Program, which began in June, if I'm not wrong here. It began in June, whereas matriculation started in August. So you do STP for a month so you can get one class or 3 credits out of the way, and so that you can familiarize yourself with the barracks, the military structure, and just to get used to hanging out with your future brother rats. Now, I did that program, no regrets. Did it give me any sort of advantage? No, I don't think so. But one cool thing is I'm still friends with the brother rats that I became friends with during STP. So I thought that was pretty cool. And so I matriculated officially in August. And as a cadet, I was a part of the F Troop company, not Foxtrot. I know a lot of people like to bag on us and say it's Foxtrot. Hey, it's whatever, okay? It's F Troop. And I was categorized into the F Troop company because at VMI, they sort you by your height. And at the time, I'm not sure how it is now because every single few years it changes up the companies, right? And the heights all vary between one another. But at the time when I matriculated F Troop, the average height was about like 5'9", 5'10", 5'11", and a few of us, including myself, were about 6 feet. So I was a part of F Troop because of my height, but looking back, I'm so thankful and grateful that I had the opportunity to be a part of F Troop, because my time at VMI would not have been as memorable had it not been for the men and women that I met through F Troop. And for extracurricular activities, I did club lacrosse, and from the games that I did play, I was the leading scorer as a midfielder because lacrosse was always my first, actually it was my second love. American football as a running back was my first love, but playing midfield in lacrosse was my second love. And so I did a little bit of that at VMI. And then I also was a part of the Glee Club as a tenor. Yeah, I love to sing. It's a weird fact, but yes, military guys can sing as well, right? Or I like to think that I can sing somewhat. Not professionally, I'm not trying to brag here, but I can sing somewhat in the shower sometimes, you know? I have a little concert in there. And I was also a part of the a cappella group known as Men in Gray, and I was one of the lead singers for that group. Now, my claim to fame from my VMI cadetship is that I never ever marched a single PT, which stands for penalty tour, which means if you garner or gather enough demerits, which is discipline points or punishment from the commandant staff, or from doing anything that seems ordinary, such as chewing gum or sleeping in or folding your clothes the wrong way, and you gather enough demerits, you can get yourself a PT or a penalty tour, and basically you're just wasting your time an hour at a time by holding a rifle at right shoulder arms. And I think sometimes they let you switch it over to left shoulder arms, and you just have to march around barracks with a rifle an hour at a time, but it's never just one PT. From what I remember, the commandant staff would hand out PTs 5, 10, 15 in categories of 5. And I think some of the more heavy punishments, such as an A1, if you are caught drinking alcohol, you have to do 60 penalty tours. Now, if you think about that, that's 60 hours wasted just marching around with a rifle. So my claim to fame is that I never got a single penalty tour. I don't even think I ever got a demerit above numeral 0 after the rat line. Because when you're a rat, oh my gosh, they give you demerits for everything and anything. Even for just looking at them or just breathing or pooping the wrong way, you can get yourself a demerit. So when I was a rat, of course, I got some demerits, but compared to the Corps as a wide, I barely got any. And especially when I became a cadet after the rat line, I always had like -20, -30 demerits. So that's my claim to fame. I'm not trying to say that I'm a goody two-shoes. It's just I never really got in trouble at VMI. And besides that, another thing that I'm notable for is I almost failed out. And that's because I didn't know how to balance or in other words, juggle how to be an aspiring military officer / university student and to do all the demands and rigors of the, what the heck was, did you hear that? And meet all the demands and rigors of the rat line. I just didn't know how to balance that. And so I was way too focused on keeping my shoes shiny and making sure I understood all the marching procedures, all the rules of the blue book. I was obsessed with trying to be the best cadet that I could be. And so my grades that first semester at VMI was so bad, and if I remember correctly, I think it was a 1.8, and I was so close to being placed on academic probation and being disenrolled for having a low GPA. But then I brought that back up, and I eventually graduated with AC stars, which stands for academic stars, which is given to cadets that have an average GPA of above a 3.5. And I graduated with distinction. So I went from almost failing out to graduating in the top of my class. So that's something I'm pretty proud about today because, man, when you're looking at your report card and it's nothing but C's and D's and F's, you don't have the confidence or the self-esteem to believe in yourself to think that you can get A's or even B's. And here's how stupid I was my rat year. I think I got a C or a B in my military training class. Everyone strives to get an A in that class. It's like a 1 or 2 credit class, and I got like a B or a C. Just to show you how stupid I was as a rat. Now VMI. So let's talk about matriculation and the Ratline experience. So VMI is unique because when you think about your living situation, okay, whether you live with roommates or your boyfriend or your girlfriend or you're married, you probably live with 1 or 2 people maximum in a room, right? VMI was a huge wake-up call for me because it was the first time in my life that I experienced sharing a room with 5 or even 6 guys at a time, with having no absolute privacy, no personal bubble space, and just having no time to yourself. Because no matter what, if you look to your left and right, there's always going to be 2 or 3 dudes next to you, either naked or fully clothed. You're never going to have that time to yourself to just pull it all together and get yourself through another day without having to share your thoughts and experiences with your brother Rat. So that was rather interesting. So let's take it all the way back to matriculation. My bad, I had to get a sip of water. I felt my throat getting perched. So for like the 20th time, let's start from the very beginning. I've been saying that like 10 times and I still haven't. So from the very beginning. So when you matriculate at VMI, what happens immediately after you say goodbye to your loved ones, whether it's your parents or even your girlfriend or boyfriend, is you begin the journey of Hell Week. When you go through Hell Week, it feels like the absolute longest torture that you can go through that goes by slowly. Every minute feels like an hour when you're going through a bad time. But after you get through the fact and you finish Hell Week, it's a blur. It goes by so freaking fast. So one of the very first things that happen to kick off Hell Week properly is that as a rat, you get to meet your cadre, which is always lovely and fun. And that's when you get to experience having people scream at the top of their lungs into your ears and have their spit go all over your face. It was an enjoyable experience. But soon after that, you get strapped down to the barber's chair and they go ahead and give you a rat haircut. Now at the time, it was this absolutely ugly version of a high and tight where it's like a 1 on top and a 0 on the sides. I think now they just go ahead and shave the entire head. But back in the day, like 10 years ago, they used to give you the ugliest motard haircut that you can think of. And I remember when I was getting my head shaved, I felt really sad. Because if you remember, I was a lacrosse player in high school, and my hair right now is pretty similar and resembles what I had when I was 18, which is 10 years ago. So imagine having hair like this and having to have it shaved. It was a bittersweet moment, but my mind was in the right place and I knew that I had to get my head shaved in order to properly become a part of the Ratline. Now during Hell Week, of course there's a lot of chaos, but it's really structured. So you feel as if they're just yelling and making you do crazy things for the heck of it, but there's a point to it all. It's so that you can learn the customs and discipline of the military lifestyle, and so that you can become a proper cadet. Now the interesting aspect about learning all the military lingo, traditions, and training is that as a rat, you learn from your cadre. Now, cadre is a title that's given to the upperclassmen And it's weird to think that some of them are only a year or two older than you. And of course, there were some prior service enlisted cadre members who served like 4 or even 8 years in the Marine Corps or in the Army as an infantry sergeant, who then decided to use their GI Bill and then go to VMI. And so you do have some prior service cadre as well. Now here's the thing. When you're a rat and you're being instructed from your cadre, you hate them. You absolutely despise them because you feel as if they go out of their way to make your day worse or to just poop all over your face and smear it so that you can get pink eye. Figuratively, not literally, of course. But the reason why they're so hard on the rats while they're trying to instruct you is that they're trying to instill a common bond so that as a rat mass and as a class and as a company, you guys can stand up together and learn to hate the system, which is to hate the cadre who are unfair to you. And when you have a common enemy, you develop an alliance with your brother rats and you develop a friendship that in theory should last a lifetime. So looking back, I understand why they were so hard, because after we broke out, we became friends with our cadre and it became normal, right? But at the time, there was no one you hated more than your cadre. But there was a system in place at VMI to put the fear of God into your heart. Now, cadre, if you think about it, some of these guys are super scary, right? When you're a rat, you see them, it's just like, oh my gosh, they're scary. But there's a group of cadets, believe it or not, to a rat's perspective, that's even scarier than the cadre. And that was known as the RDC. Now, if I remember correctly, RDC stands for the Rat Disciplinary Committee. Now, the RDC can be explained as the enforcers or the punishers of the Ratline. And they were usually first-classmen that were mostly privates, but a few rankers mixed in there. And a handful of them were second-classmen because the next year they would become the officers of the RDC as first-classmen. Now, for the rest of the video, I just wanted to share with you a handful of stories from the Ratline in a timeline chronological standpoint. It's not going to be like a history story, but rather some instances or experiences that stand out to me. The RDC, these cadets were freaking yoked. They were all huge, muscular meatheads, and most of them, if not all, were commissioning into the Army as infantry officers or into the Marine Corps. So these guys were pretty intense. By the way, at VMI, you can commission into any of the 5 armed services. You can be Coast Guard ensign, Navy ensign, Air Force lieutenant, Army, or even Marine Corps lieutenant. Getting back on track with the RDC, there was one time where, I forget what the reason was, but there was this redheaded dude, this RDC guy, who absolutely hated my guts for absolutely no reason. He just loved picking on me, and I still remember him. Okay, I still remember him. I don't know his name anymore, but he, oh my gosh, every time he saw me, he would just mess with me and in a loving way haze me, but not really loving, because I genuinely think he hated me. I don't know what it was. But he ended up giving me a RDC slip, which is when you're a rat, you carry around in your hat. By the way, you don't have pockets. I don't know if the rules changed or not, but back then, 10 years ago, we didn't have pockets in our pants. In our summer class study, we didn't have pockets, so we carried everything inside of our cover, which is the hat. And at all times, we had to carry like 5 or 10 RDC slips. Now, as a rat, that is one thing that you do not want to get or to give, is an RDC slip. For an upperclassman to say, give me an RDC slip, you're going to be summoned to the RDC for a trial and a punishment. Now I forget what the reason was or why I ended up having to give him my RDC slip, but because I did, I had to eventually be summoned for an RDC trial. And it was, I'm not even gonna lie, as an 18-year-old, I was pissing myself. I was so scared because in my head I was like, what are they gonna do to me? Are they gonna strap me to a chair and waterboard me? Are they gonna hit me? Are they gonna, are they gonna do something weird? But I'm not gonna go into the details of what happened at the trial. But immediately afterwards, it was about 12:15, so a little past midnight, and I was soaked in sweat, right? I was exhausted from the trial of what happened. And so I remember I was so sweaty, I just climbed into my hay. At VMI, you don't have beds. Instead, you sleep on a wooden rack and on a piece of, on a cloth-filled bedding. We called it a hay. Now, I remember I laid down and I was so freaking sweaty and still sweating because there's no air conditioning. And intentionally, there's no air conditioning because at VMI, they're trying to keep the experience as authentic as possible and as a Spartan lifestyle as they advertise. And so I was sweating and I just couldn't sleep. And so I decided to get up and take a shower before going to bed. Oh man, I am thirsty today. I don't know if it's because it's hot, but yeah, just got some water. But getting up in the middle of the night at about 12:30 to take a shower was a mistake. Now, it's pretty funny looking back, but at the time, I was sketched out. So let me tell you what happened. So I got up, I went to the 4th stoop bathroom, which is where we lived, and at the time, F Troop, we were situated along 3rd Barracks, which is the housing installment. By the way, all cadets live on post. There's no such thing as commuting. There's no such thing as graduate students. There's no such thing as civilian students. Everyone is a part of the Corps Cadets. And at the time, we lived in 3rd Barracks, which is to the furthest left when you look at barracks from the front. And I went to the 4th stoop bathroom to take a shower. And even today, taking a shower after being sweaty all day and having a long, stressful day, it's relaxing, right? I mean, I still do it today. If I have a bad day, there's nothing better than to just put my hand up on the wall of the bathroom wall and just let the water hit my back, right? Just feel it rushing down on my back and just wash away my worries and sorrows for the day. But at VMI, it's a little different. There's no privacy. As a matter of fact, it's a little awkward because you have the shower heads facing one another without any doors or shower curtains. So when you're showering, you're literally facing another dude that's about a foot away from you, and you got to be careful before your, bare butt cheeks hit one another. It's kind of like that. It's whatever. You learn to quickly become comfortable with your own body and learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Because in high school, that's kind of weird, right? You would think showering with other dudes, that's weird and awkward. But at VMI, oh my gosh, you get out of that awkwardness real fast. But anyways, right after that RDC trial, I was taking a shower and these days I take cold showers because I'm all about the whole Wim Hof method and allowing your body to endure the cold. Fully in, fully out with your breath and everything. But back then I used to take hot, steamy, warm showers. And there are pros and cons to both sides of the story, right? If you take cold showers, it helps and boosts your immune system and whatnot. But for warm showers, it helps you to de-stress and to relax. And so you have to imagine, I just got done after like 40 minutes of an RDC trial. I was sweaty, I was stressed, I was sad. I was questioning my existence. Why am I here? Why do I have to call myself a rat? This rat is a rat. Oh, by the way, when you're a rat, you are not allowed to even say I, me, or anything that resembles you being a human. That is stripped away from you, and you have to earn everything. Even the ability to walk on grass is a right and a privilege. So when you're a rat, you have your humanity stripped away and you become a rat. Go figure, right? So, oh my gosh, I'm getting all over the place. I need to be referencing the notepad so that I stop getting off track. So there I was, taking a hot shower. It was about 12:30. TAPS, which is our bedtime at VMI, is 11:30. So everyone is pretty much asleep. If you're a rat, that is. If you're an upperclassman, some of us stayed up to play Call of Duty or to finish up on projects or assignments that are due the next day, which I would soon experience as an upperclassman. But anyways, I was taking a shower, it was warm, and I was feeling good about myself. Not even 2 or maybe 3 minutes into the shower, somebody walks into the bathroom and he turns off the light and says, "Start straining." Now, as a rat, I'm not going to demonstrate for you because I'm too old to be doing it. But as a rat, there's a reason why they say when you're a rat, you join the rat line, because it's a rigid line in the barracks that as a rat you have to follow step by step. By the way, my class was one of the last classes, rat masses, to run in barracks while straining, because I remember in, this is fast forwarding a little bit, I remember in January, right before we broke out, the upperclassmen or cadre, they were punishing us and making us do stoop runs. But in January in Virginia, it snows. And when it snows, the concrete floor of the barracks, it freezes over sometimes. And I remember my brother Rad and a lot of others, not just one of my brother Rads, but a lot of others would slip and fall and literally get huge bruises all up along our hips and our backs because we were running in barracks while straining. Needless to say, the next year, they got rid of running, and now, from my understanding as an alumnus, or an alumni, whatever you want to say, there's no more running. But I do believe that the rats still strain. But anyways, as a rat, you have to follow a rigid line in barracks while straining. Now, straining, I guess I can verbally describe it to you, even though I'm not going to physically show you, because it's, it's a little embarrassing. You tuck your chin in, you roll your shoulders back, you pin your hands to your side, and then you put your arch of the back into it. And if you do it properly, you shouldn't be able to breathe. So as a rat, that's what we have to do. Now, this upperclassman that walked into the bathroom, he told us to start straining while we're showering, and he turned off the lights. And we were terrified. Oh, by the way, I wasn't the only one in there. There was me and one other brother rat who was also at the RDC trial. So we were straining, and it was dark, and we were still under the shower, right? The water was still hitting our backs, and it was warm water. He walks over to us and says, "Face the wall, keep straining." And he turns the water all the way to the coldest setting. I don't even know why he did that. I know he was trolling. But at the time, I had to fight back from laughing, because I was like, what the f is this dude doing? He put the water all the way to the coldest setting, and we were like suffering, like mildly suffering. Not in a sense where it's psychologically traumatic, but suffering as in it's really discomforting. So we had like frigid ice water hitting our bare bodies. He was laughing, and when he caught us starting to smirk, he started to get into our faces about it. When later on I found out that he was actually one of the RDC members, and I don't know, I thought that was a hilarious moment because here we are trying to take a little moment out of the day in our own privacy to enjoy a shower where momentarily you can just escape the rat line, be butt-ass naked, and just shower in our own peace. And here comes this RDC guy, ruins the party by literally turning the faucet to the coldest setting. I thought that was one of the more funny, interesting, weird, and strange encounters with the RDC. Oh my goodness gracious, this video is going to be super long because I feel like I'm rambling and just going on, and I feel my voice is super raspy. But you know what, it's all good. I still got a few more stories I wanted to share with you. Now, when you're a rat, there is actually a location on campus that is a safe haven, a sanctuary, and a place where you can just kind of escape from the rat line, I suppose. Early on, I thought the bathroom, the shower, where you can be butt naked and shower, that's our moment of peace to ourselves, but I quickly learned it's not. So the actual safe haven on campus, where the rules of the rat line are not technically applicable, is the library. Now, as a rat, I learned to love the library. And I remember sometimes on Saturdays when we didn't have much training to do, which was very rare, by the way. I think it was maybe 2 or 3 Saturdays out of the entire rat line. I would find myself at the library, but not to study, not to research, not to even, well, I guess it is, to take a break from the rat line. I remember a few brother rats and we would go to the library on the top, the highest floor. Now, there were some group study rooms where, of course, there's a window that allows you to face outward or for people to see what's inside as well. We would go inside, turn on the lights, close the door, and we would sleep under the table. Now, looking back, that is freaking hilarious. We would momentarily take a break from the rat line to take a short nap. Now, as a rat, when you can sleep in or just take a nap, that's one of the most glorious things that you can do. Now, I don't want to give you the wrong impression. It's not an hour nap or even 2 hours. When we would take naps, we were so sketched out, we would only be able to do it for 15 minutes, and we would think that was the best thing in the world. Because as a rat, man, you go to sleep late, you have to wake up really early, and the entire day there's all these demands physically, academically, militarily, mentally, emotionally, and sometimes you just need to take a break and take a nap. And when you're not able to do that throughout the week, it wears you down. And so when we figured out the system and we were able to take short little 15-minute naps in the library, those were some of the best moments, some of the best 15 minutes ever as a rat. Now, it's funny because as a rat, I thought as the library as a place to take a nap. But as an upperclassman, my view and mentality of the library changed because I spent almost nearly every hour of my free time as an upperclassman in the library trying to get my GPA back up and my grades to a point that are above the standard and above average. And so in the future, I ended up hating the library. But as a rat, oof, I freaking love the library. Man, I wonder how long this freaking video is. I feel as if it's too long already, and a lot of you are probably bored out of your mind. But if you are a prospective cadet or a fellow alumni or somebody that has a tie or connection to VMI, these are probably stories that will strike you fancy, right? Anyways, the third thing that I wanted to talk about in this video is the Corps Cadets. I think I touched upon it a little bit earlier, but I wanted to elaborate upon what the Corps Cadets is all about. In one simple phrase, you can imagine the Corps Cadets as a big-ass family. One big family where 98, I don't know, when I was a cadet at the time, I think it was like 96. So about 96% of the family is male. And a lot of them are type A alpha, muscular meatheads, right? It's a big-ass family. And so as a result, you fight together and you eat together, you rejoice together, you cry together, right? And you even take naps in the library together. That's what being a part of the Corps of Cadets is all about. I remember as a rat being a part of the Corps of Cadets. There was nothing more that you looked forward to in the mess hall than eating lunch with your dyke. And a dyke is a first-classman, which is a senior, that is your mentor. And as a result, you actually have to be their servant. And in return, they teach you the ways of VMI, the tricks, the tools, and the trade of how to be a proper and successful cadet. But as a rat, you would have to clean their rooms, make their bed, shine their shoes, and just little chores here and there. But I remember eating lunch with your dykes was one of the best moments of your day, because as a rat, and part of a regimental system, you had to do BRC and SRC and eat meals as a Corps of Cadets. And as a rat, if you're not eating lunch with your dyke, that means you had to eat with your cadre. And eating breakfast or dinner with your cadre, dude, it's a terrible experience, because the entire time they would troll the heck out of you. Or in other words, if you don't know what troll means, they would intentionally mess with you and get inside of your head while you're eating. And here's the thing, here's the kicker. When you're eating, I remember this vividly. Your stomach, or I guess your chest, depending on how short you are, had to touch the edge of the table. You had to sit upright, your chin up, your eyes forward. You were not allowed to look at your food. You were not allowed to dart your eyes. You had to look at the man or woman across the table from you. You were allowed to take one spoonful at a time into your mouth. And depending on what company you were, sometimes you were given 3 bites, 3 chews. Wait, how do you even say that? You were allowed to chew your food, there we go, 3 times, 5 times, 10 times, unlimited, depending on the company that you were. And then you would have to put your spoon down, put it to your side, and do only 1 spoonful of food at a time. Now here's where it gets tricky. I think BRC or SRC, they were usually 20 minutes, depending on what battalion you were. 1st Battalion would go eat first for 20 minutes, and then we would be right behind them. 2nd Battalion, F Troop was a part of 2nd Battalion, and you would get 20 minutes to eat. Just because I don't think there was enough tables or enough room to eat. Now if you're lucky and you're an upperclassman, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, that's plenty of time to pick what you want to eat and to eat it all, and maybe get 2nd or 3rds if you're lucky. But as a rat, when you have to abide by the rule of just 1 spoonful at a time and being allowed to chew 3 or 4 times, when you think about it, you only get about 5 or 6 spoonfuls of food in the entire meal. Because, did I tell you that you eat your food with your cadre? So say that the table is a rectangle shape. You would have 4 cadets sitting here, and then 4 facing this way, and on either end of the table would be a corporal or a sergeant or a member of the cadre that monitors you and trolls you while you eat. Meaning they would ask you questions about the rat book. Wait, is it the rat Bible? I forget what it's called. From the rat book, trivial knowledge. They would make fun of you and, you know, just get into your head and mess with you. And it's funny looking back. But Man, I remember one time, I think he was the XO. Now this dude was such a dick. All of us hated him because during Resurrection Week, which, by the way, Hell Week is when you're initiated into the Corps Cadets. Resurrection Week is when you're about to break out of the Ratline, and it's an entire week of amplified activities as a rat. I remember we were doing stoop runs, and then he made us do push-ups in the courtyard, which is not a problem, because as a rat, you do hundreds of push-ups a day, so your body becomes accustomed to it, and it doesn't really become that hard eventually. But I remember it wasn't the usual type of push-ups that we were forced to do. I don't know what it was. I don't know what got into him. But he gave us a speech saying he thought of us as a disgrace and that he would never serve alongside any one of us and that we don't deserve to be here. And he just said a lot of crazy words, which is weird because the following day would be our breakout and we would be sort of equals. But this dude, he was a dick. He hated us, whatever. So this is the guy that I'm referencing to right now. He was the cadre that was at my table during SRC, and we were eating, and this was Resurrection Week, and I remember he made a drink that had like A1 sauce, syrup, ketchup, like grinded up the mashed potatoes, and some kind of weird meat, and he spit in it, right? And I remember he held the cup up and said, "Rats, break your eyes, cut your eyes and look at this. I want you each to take a sip from this cup to signify your bond or whatever," or something dumb like that. And so everyone was taking a sip, and 7 rats or brother rats before me took a sip. And it was my turn, and I was holding the cup and I was looking at it. It was like this nasty, it had a nasty odor, okay? And I didn't want to be that guy that did not do what my other brother rats were doing. And so I took a sip from it as well, and I kid you not, the entire time afterwards, I was fighting back, vomiting. I kept thinking to myself like, oh, what the heck was that? And looking back, you're like, yo, that's freaking gross. Oh, what a douche. But anyways, eating dinner or breakfast as a rat, I feel like one of the most challenging aspects about it is that you had to eat, with your eyes straight across, sitting up straight, one bite at a time, not being able to look at your food. I think one of the funniest aspects is sometimes it would be Italian night where the mess hall, the air mark, the kitchen staff, they would serve us spaghetti. Dude, if you know anything about wearing a white uniform, you know that eating pasta with red sauce is hazardous because it is so easy to stain your clothes. And as an upperclassman, that's not a big deal. You can just go back to your room and change it out. But as a rat, when you eat spaghetti, dude, it's the hardest thing in the world. Because not only do you have to use a spoon, sometimes they allowed you to use your fork, right? And if you use your fork, okay, you can twirl it, you can get 1 spoonful, but do you know how hard it is to get spaghetti with the strangling pieces of pasta dangling into your mouth without getting any of the red sauce onto your uniform? Because if you got any sauce onto your uniform, which many of us did, you got yourself an RDC slip or RDC send-up, or you got demerits. So it was a lose-lose situation for breakfast and dinner. But lunch were some of the best times to eat as a rat, because when you ate with your dykes, they temporarily allowed you to just eat freely, right? And you were allowed to get hamburgers, hot dogs, french fries, and just be a normal dude and eat. But for breakfast and dinner, dude, those were some terrible times eating. But I enjoyed it because after we broke out, we kept the tradition of eating together as a company at a table. And I remember we would always go upstairs because the table's in the lower floor of the mess hall. I think it can seat probably 12 people if you wanted maximum. But upstairs, what we would do is we would push the tables together so that about 30 of us F troopers could all sit together and eat. Now, the next story that I want to share with you is the rat riot that the class of 2014 that we were a part of. Now, this is going to be so hard to explain without you being there or you experiencing it yourself. But essentially, a rat riot is one way. There's many ways, right? There's a lot of ways that a rat mass can show that they're unified and that they're a brotherhood, sisterhood, brother rats, you know? But a rat riot is one of the ways we can show that unity. And I remember it was, I believe in November, that we decided to have a rat riot to show that the class of 14 was ready for a breakout and that we were one. This is so petty, but we picked the class of 2012's ring figure night to do the rat riot. Dude, that's so messed up when you think about it, because ring figure is one of the more symbolic and memorable moments of your cadetship, and we decided to ruin the class of 2012's ring figure by having a rat riot. That's so freaking petty looking back. Okay, so what happened is, right after SRC, I remember my brother rats and we all gathered up into tiny meeting rooms, and we assembled a time and when we were going to do it. When the hour struck 8:30, we began the rat riot. Now, throughout the history of VMI, there were a lot of different methods of a rat riot, but this is how my brother rats and I decided to do a rat riot. We ran down to the second stoop, which is where the second classmen live, which are juniors, which is the rooms where the class of 2012 live, and we tornadoed their room. So, tornadoing a room is essentially when you go into a military structured room where everything has to be placed in the perfect spot. The toothbrush in this place, towel neatly folded, clothes a certain way, right? Everything has to look and be at a certain place. When you tornado it, you go in and you grab everything and throw it on the floor and disrupt everything. And I felt like deep down inside, we were getting our revenge, because at least once or twice a week, sometimes the upperclassmen would come into our rooms on the fourth stoop and tornado our stuff. And then lo and behold, we would get in trouble because we would have room inspections like 3 or 5 times a week. And they would come in and be like, why is your room such a mess? Why is it not clean? And it's because some douche would come in and tornado our room. And so I guess deep down inside, we were getting, fulfilling the karma. And we tornadoed their rooms. And I remember my brother Rats and I, we hated, at the time we hated, but I think after we broke out, we learned to like the dude. But at the time we hated him. We hated our ops sergeant. Right? He was the one that formulated and structured guard duty. We hated him. Guard duty is something that every cadet has to do because the Corps Cadets, VMI is a cadet-run system, meaning that cadets are the ones who guard the system, fulfill the system, and carry out the orders of the system. We hated him. So we went to his room in New Barracks and we tornadoed everything. We grabbed his shoes and we took it a step further and we threw it out to the courtyard. Not just inside of his room. We took his hay and threw it out the window. Dude, we went too far. And I remember right after, we were rejoicing. And you couldn't imagine the ruckus that was going on in barracks. The class, our dykes were cheering us on. They wanted us to do it because they hated the class of 2012. I don't know why. It's a long feud that goes back a few dyke lines, but they hated the class of 12. And so they were cheering us on. Class of 13 were taking pictures and videos and laughing. We were, dude, the barracks was wild that night. But it wasn't soon after that the commandant, which are retired active duty officers who are now colonels or even sergeant majors, they got pissed. Oh my goodness, they got pissed. They demanded that the RDC put the Ratline back into order. And I remember in the intercom, they announced that the rats ought to drink water because we were going to be punished for our actions. And rightfully so, right? If you do a rat ride, of course you should be disciplined, right? And boy, did we suffer for it. I remember the rat ride was at like 8:30ish. We were done at like 8:45 because, you know, when the adrenaline is going through your body, you can get a lot done in 15 minutes. We had our sweat party at like 9, back to back sweat parties from the RDC, from I think the class of 13 as well. And they were punishing us, but you know deep down they were smiling and laughing because we did a successful rat ride. But I remember at the time, like, bro, we were suffering from the sweat parties. Oh, if you don't know what a sweat party is, my memory is kind of blurry, but a sweat party is... I think 5 rounds or 3 rounds, 3 or 5 minutes, and you get pushed to the limit, doing high knees, star jumpers, push-ups, flutter kicks. Essentially, it's a workout that's kind of with suffering in mind, right? It's meant to break you. And sometimes, if somebody was mad at you, they would find you at SRC when you're eating as a rat, and they would force you to drink a glass or 2 of whole milk, knowing that there's a sweat party later that night, because when you do a sweat party and you're doing high knees, you're gonna puke everywhere. I remember for our transgressions against the class of 12, man, we had sweat parties like our lives depended on it. And especially the next day too, I think we were punished as well. But it was worth it. I don't think the class of 12 holds a grudge against us anymore because they know deep down inside it's something that we had to do as a rat mass. So, okay, so moving right along, the next thing I wanted to talk to you about from my Ratline is the honor code. Now, VMI is unique in that it's a single sanction honor code. If you violate it once, you're done, you're out. And it goes like this. A cadet will not lie, cheat, steal, nor tolerate those who do. That is our honor code system that we as rats live by. And eventually, as a VMI cadet, integrity becomes a part of your character. And one of my roommates eventually became the honor court president. And so the honor code was all around me. But I remember during Hell Week and almost every single week of the Ratline, there was a drum out. Now, a drum out is when a cadet is found guilty from a cadet jury of breaking one of the 3 tenets of either lying, stealing, or cheating, right? Academically. Or in any way possible that you can cheat. Now, during a drum out, the Corps Cadets, now remember, we eat together, we fight together, we shower together, and together we get awoken up. Right? Now, during drum outs, they would always wake us up at 333. Now, that number is symbolic because it's the number that's halfway to 666. It gets into a whole dark theory that I don't want to get into. But I remember being woken up at 3:33 almost every single week for a drum out. And I feel like as a cadet, that's a part of the Corps of Cadets, you would understand to not lie, cheat, or steal after experiencing one drum out in the school year, right? It's like if you just saw your classmate get expelled for lying, why would you want to do that? Anyways, I think drum outs are one of the more prominent reasons as to why we started out with about 500 or so rats. in May 2014, we ended up graduating basically only a fraction of what we started with because, I don't know, I guess it's human inclination or human nature to want to lie or steal. So I guess that's one of the more dark aspects of the whole VMI experience is the whole honor code and those that break it. So I couldn't do it. I couldn't wait to eat after the video, so I decided to just eat as I talk, as I share my stories with you. The next story that I want to share with you, let me gather myself here, is when we had a company brawl between F Troop and Tiger Echo. Now it's funny because in barracks, especially 3rd barracks, I was known as the friendly guy. I was kind of popular, right? Because of my personality, the way I am. I'm funny, outgoing, adventurous, dangerous. And especially because during STP, I made a lot of friends with people that eventually became a part of Echo. And I was not. I was F Troop. I actually did not meet a single other F Trooper. Oh, I did, one other F Trooper. But anyways, my room in 3rd barracks was the last room before Echo's rooms started. So directly to the right of my rat room was where Echo Company, their rat rooms began, right? And so I remember one night, I think it was like a Friday, we were bored, we were chilling in 10, maybe 15. I think it was closer to 15 or 20. 15 or 20 Echo brother rats rushed into my F Troop room. I was there just chilling, right? They grabbed me, they strapped me with the hay straps, and they put E, you know, the letter E, not my last name E, but the letter E, onto my chest with shaving cream, and they took pictures of it. It was all fun and games, right? But I don't know. I don't know if it was the leader in me or if I just wanted revenge. Immediately after they left the room, you know, all 15, 20 of the Echo guys, I gathered up my brother rats that were in F Troop. And I remember I was like, we got to get them back. We got to get those midgets back. Now, the reason why I call them midgets back in the day is because Echo, the height requirements to be an Echo was that you had to be 5'7" and below. So most of the guys in that company were like 5'5", 5'4". So we call them Echo Elves, whatever. I remember I gathered up my F Troop brother rats that were willing to partake in this brawl, and I gathered them up into the corner room, because the corner room was huge. It was, I want to say, like 3 times the size of a normal room. I gathered them up in there, and I told Echo to meet us there, and they did. Dude, it was wild. It was so much fun. You would never think that 15 guys fighting 15 other guys would be fun, but it was so much fun. And to make matters even worse, or to make matters even more fun, we had to turn off the lights so that no upperclassmen or no RDC would catch us. And we just punched one another, tackled one another. We all had each other in headlocks. It was so much freaking fun. That company brawl, I believe, is one of the reasons why we bonded even further together as a company, because we had to retaliate and get back at the midgets for attacking me. I don't want to make it seem as if there's a strife or a divide among the companies, because the rat mass was small enough where we virtually all knew each other and we could be friends with one another. And so, as a rat mass, we were pretty close. I mean, I'm sure we could argue that Bravo, you know, Ball Bustin' Bravo, those guys were pretty close with one another, or Cold Steel Charlie, they're close with one another, or Mad Dog Delta, they're close, F Troop, they're close. But if we were to just meet one another on the streets, or at a party, we're at a venue, you can be rest assured that we're gonna be like this. 2 peas in a pod, 2 testicles in a scrotum. We're gonna be pretty close. So, as a company, yes, we're close, but as a rat mass, yes, we're even closer. And to further illustrate that point, as a rat mass, we were selected non-voluntarily to become mandatory cheerleaders at sporting events. Now, this is weird to me because never in my life had I to cheerlead instead of being an active player on the field. Because I was always playing on the field, not a cheerleader on the sideline. And so it was kind of weird for me to be a cheerleader, but I don't know, something weird happened to me. When you're forced to become a cheerleader, rather than just enjoying the game, you know, spectating the game, it kind of takes the fun out of it. When you're forced to become a cheerleader, dude, you kind of just don't even want to be there anymore. And I think one of the reasons why we kind of didn't like being there is our team, our football team, dude, we would lose every game. And we play at the Division I level, NCAA, which is the highest level of play, right? And being a really tiny school at the time, I think it was like 1,200, 1,300 cadets. Coming from a tiny school, our program was not that good, right? And that's not to knock on our football players. No. I liked our football players. I was friends with the football players. But when we lost almost every single game by like 7 or 9 or 15 touchdowns, dude, it got pretty bad. And especially when you were forced to be enthusiastic and to keep being a cheerleader, dude, it took kind of the fun out of it. Now here's the thing, I liked the guys on the team, but I didn't like being a cheerleader at the football games. And so I feel like for the 4 years that I was at VMI, I mean, I love football now. I'm a huge NFL fan, right? But for the 4 years that I was at VMI, I actually despised football because, I don't know, it's just when you take the fun out of it and you're forced to be a cheerleader, it wasn't a good time, right? It sounds like I'm complaining, but I'm sure that you can relate to me if you've ever experienced something similar. But anyways, let me wrap up this video because I feel like I've been just mumbling and rambling for the longest time. And I just wanted to end the video on a high note. So after about 6 months in the rat line, after 6 months of being a rat, you can finally go through Resurrection Week, which is a week filled with the rat line on steroids, right? Everything is a lot more dedicated and a lot more serious and a lot more amplified. And then after that process, you go through something called breakout. Essentially, breakout is a way for you to break out of being a rat and to earn your title of being a human again. And you can use pronouns such as I or me or you. And you can be a cadet, a part of VMI. But until then, you're a rat. And so after 6 months of enduring the system as a rat, you earn the privilege and the right to be a cadet. And so I remember my breakout. They woke us up really early in the morning. And I remember it was really early in the morning because the night before we had a sweat party that lasted well into late in the night. And I remember my roommates at the time and I, we were so excited, we were so joyful that it was almost over. We were running on empty that entire week of Resurrection Week. Man, your dykes, they make you do ridiculous things too. So not only is it the cadre and the RDC after you, but it's your dykes that turn against you as well. It's hard love, how I like to coin it. Making you do all sorts of weird things, right? And when I became a dyke, of course I did the same things, okay? So I'm not a hypocrite here, all right? So my rat roommates and I, we were running on empty, maybe getting an hour or two of sleep every night. Well, at the same time, we're still students, and in January, it's the second semester, right? So first semester, I failed. I did terribly. What is that? A D plus average GPA? Terrible. Second semester, of course I didn't care about my grades yet because I was so excited that we were about to break out. The night before, we had a sweat party that lasted well into the late of the night. And my roommates and I, super excited, running on empty, picking up where we left off on. And I remember I personally couldn't sleep because I was so excited. I had so much adrenaline running through my veins, and I was so stupid. But I was so excited, I wanted to be so pumped up that I took a pre-workout. Now, I don't know if it's still on the market or not, but it was one of those pre-workouts where it was a tiny spoonful and your skin would tingle. Gosh, what was it called? Okay, if I remember, I'll put it in the description. But I remember I took like 3 scoops of that pre-workout, and you're not supposed to do that before a cardiovascular event. But I did, and I kicked ass during the sweat party because, dude, I felt like my eyeballs were gonna pop out of my head. And as a result, I couldn't sleep in the night. And I remember I was laying there at like 2:45 thinking, dude, I'm about to become a cadet at VMI. I was so excited. I had just turned 19 years old. And I think it was around like 3:40 or 4 a.m. We were woken up as a rat mass from machine guns going off and rifles and bombs and all these loud noises that resemble 4th of July, right? And what began breakout, which was a really long day of just sweat parties, strenuous events, and I think a really long march to Newmarket. Carrying something in her backpack at the time, I don't even remember. It's such a blur. When you run on empty with little sleep and little food, your memory is not the most sharp. I remember as we were finishing up breakout at about 6 p.m., we had a sweat party on every stoop. I think 4th stoop was from our cadre, 3rd stoop was from the 3rd classmen, 2nd stoop were from the 2nd classmen, and I think on 1st stoop, it was from our dykes, the 1st classmen, our mentors. And I think after that sweat party, they assembled us into the old barracks courtyard, and then we had an old yell as a class of 14 finally, and it resembled our breakout, right? But before you have your official breakout, the administration and the system, they reward you with a breakout steak dinner that's supposed to be a reward, okay? Now, mind you, at the time, when you have that steak, it's something that you look forward to and you hear about it. It's kind of like a myth, right? When you're a rat, you're like, they're gonna give us steak? Because the entire rat line, you're barely eating half an egg. You're barely eating 1 meatball, right? And besides the lunch that you have with your dyke. So that when you hear that you're gonna be fed a piece of steak for your celebratory breakout dinner, you're kind of like, no way, you're joking, man. But they did. The mess hall, they presented us a steak. Now I have to confess to you that it was the most dry, disgusting, overcooked, but the glorious piece of steak that I've ever had in my life before. Because that piece of steak signified that I was no longer a rat, but rather I was a cadet at the Virginia Military Institute, and I was finally able to breathe, right? I no longer had to worry about being hazed or doing anything ridiculous in the middle of the night, but I was finally a cadet. At VMI. And so, Although the steak tasted disgusting, spiritually, dude, it was the best piece of steak ever. Immediately after that, I think they assembled us to the old barracks courtyard once again. And that's when the RDC told us to stop straining, let your chins out. Boom, you're done. You're finally a part of the system of the Corps Cadets, and you're recognized as a fourth classman. Yay! Now, it's a military tradition where when you get done with a training or a program or a school, that you smoke a cigar. Now, mind you, I'm 19 years old. I've never smoked in my life a cigar before. But I'll never forget, my dyke got my co-dykes and I, which are the other rats that were in my dyke's room, a cigar for us to smoke. Dude, I gotta confess to you, I had no idea that there was a proper way to smoke a cigar. Apparently, you're not supposed to inhale the smoke. You're supposed to let it run through your nose and your mouth and let it back out. We didn't know that, okay? So we smoked, and dude, that was probably one of the worst experiences I've ever had after having such a glorious event occur that day. Smoking a cigar ruined everything. I remember almost all of my brother rats were sick as a dog. And I remember my future roommate, who eventually became the ops sergeant of our company, and then eventually became the XO, my roommate, he smoked a cigar. It was his first time too. He couldn't stop puking into a trash can the entire night. It was disgusting, okay? You have to imagine, do you remember that Family Guy episode where Peter, Chris, and the dog Brian, everyone's puking all over the place? It was kind of like that. All of us were sick as a dog and just puking everywhere. But yeah, I mean, looking back as an alumnus, that's my Ratline story. I mean, let me know what you thought of this video. I have so many more stories. That was only 6 months of my cadetship. I have so many more stories I can tell you from my 3rd class year, 2nd class year, 1st class year. I even have memories and tips I can share from Hell Week. But let me know, what did you think about this video? I just wanted to take a step back from being serious all the time and just talk to the camera once again, with a laid back demeanor and just chill out, you know what I mean? But anyways, I think I talked too much today. And yeah, I'll talk to you guys next time. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please leave a comment down below and let me know what you thought. And I'll talk to you next time.